days is out of control. Just because someone is transgender now, they can go into public schools and parade themselves like a prostitute and walk around because it's so-called an expression of art. No, it's absolute immorality and wickedness that deserves Satan's place called hell. There's nothing righteous, nothing good, nothing wholesome about what's happening in our public schools today. Wicked city. We're living in wicked times. So these two, they lived in, one in Sodom, the other in Jericho. Jericho, you may not know it, but Jericho was known for moon worshiping, idolatry, and practices of all sorts of abomination. That was Jericho. Sodom, related to its immoral sister Gomorrah, is known for its overt wickedness, vile behavior, abominations of homosexuality and lesbianism, and I would add beastiality, and all the absolute wickedness that today is being accepted in our general public. I'm going to say something, probably upset some of you, but I want to tell you something. The lean taking place right now is headed in the direction that even pedophilia is going to be entertained and allowed. It got quiet right there. You don't want to hear that, but I am telling you, you look at society, you look at the history of Rome and the history of great nations. If a nation forgets God, is doomed to get more and more wicked. You ought to be thanking God you've got a preacher and a pastor that gets up and turns red-faced about wickedness in our society and wickedness in our culture. I want to tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. What is right is still right. What is holy is still holy. What is wicked is still wicked. And what is abominable by God's definition is still abominable. They lived in wicked cities. Genesis 13 establishes God's opinion on homosexuality. You say, well, I think you're against homosexuality, Pastor, by the way you're preaching. I want to tell you what the Bible says. You want to see it? Go to Genesis 13. I don't care what Oprah Winfrey says, or Joel Osteen, or T.D. Jakes, or the rest of them that put a patty cake on this kind of wickedness. Here's what the Bible says, and I know I'm stressing my voice, but it's time somebody get in your God-given head and listen right and think right. Look what he said. But the men of Sodom were wicked and sinners before the Lord exceedingly. That's a heavy, powerful adverb, exceedingly. Did you catch that? It means beyond measure. There's no limit to the wickedness. And when we throw the restraints of morality off, there's no telling what we as human beings, corrupt, sinful human beings can do. They lived in sinful cities. The men of Sodom were wicked exceedingly before the Lord, but Rahab and Lot lived in wicked cities. You say, why in the world are you stressing that so much? I want to tell you something, folks. This is not a kind and happy time to rear children. I remember my little brother Russell stole something from Perry's drugstore. And he did. He stole. He's a pastor today. He is. I watched him steal. And I saw him do it. And I must have been complicit to the crime because I didn't say anything to my mother. But as we were going out of the store clerk came out and said to my mother, I just want you to know your son took something. Oh, man, this was the time of my life. I watched Russell get in trouble. He was my best man in my wedding. By the way, you'll see he signed our marriage certificate. My older brother didn't have a thing to do with my wedding. There you go. I'm just kidding. Russell was my best man. And I'll never forget that clerk came over to my mother and said, Madam, your son stole something. My mother took that boy, emptied his pockets, and found he stole a Butterfinger candy bar. And he just turned 57 years old, my little brother did. And when I see him, when he comes here, I'm going to give him a Butterfinger candy bar. But you know what my mother did? My mother made that boy go over, give it back to that man, apologized to him. The clerk in return said to my mother, thank you for making him make that right. My mother took him home, you ready for this? And she blistered his hind end to where he couldn't sit down for a week. And then when my dad came home, guess what happened then? He got another blistering. See, today now we've got people throw a fit and attack the clerk and act like I have a right to it. It's under $1,000. If you're in California, you get away with it. And they act like, well, I deserve that. I wanted a candy bar. It's my thing. No, this is the day we're in. Yeah. Wicked. It's wicked. So Lot and Rahab both lived in a wicked city. Number two, let me give you this.